Hey everyone, today I want to talk about product mental models. A product mental model is a team's shared understanding of what a product is, what its major entities are, and how those entities relate to each other. In other words, it is the ontology of the product. When we describe a house to a realtor, for example, we don't describe the house by its decor. We don't say, I want a house which is blue in color or which has a door, um, on the side or anything like that. Instead, we normally start by describing the structure of the house. For example, we'll say we would like a three-bedroom, two-bath house, which is 1,500 square feet. It is single story or multi-story and so on. We don't say, you know, I want a blue colored house or a green colored house first. I mean, we will come to that. We'll come to the experience. We'll come to the come to the other factors of the house. But we always start with the structure of the house. Similarly, when you are designing a new product, you always start with the structure of the house and the relationship and the entities in that structure and the relationship between those entities. In other words, the ontology of the product. That is the product mental model. How will you start defining the mental model or creating the mental model of your product? You start by describing what the products what the product does. What is the hierarchy of the entities in your product. For example, you'll say, um, my product is um, a project management or a project collaboration product. Now this product has an organization. There will be an organization. We'll create this for a customer, and that organization will have one or more workspaces in it. Every workspace will have one or more projects in it. Every project will have a team of collaborators, and so on and so on. Now, ideally, in a next slide, you will elaborate on what is inside a project, and then you will elaborate on the relationship between the entities within a project, and so on and so forth. And then you will annotate and add enough details so that the structure, the entities and the relationship between those entities slowly unfolds and is very clearly laid out for yourself, your design colleagues, your engineering colleagues, and so on. Now you may wonder, there are multiple frameworks and multiple concepts that we use during product definition. So where does the mental model fit in? That, for example, there is the jobs to be done framework. The job to be done framework is the job a customer is hiring your product to do. Now, you always start with that. Why am I building this product, or why am I building this feature? What is the job the customer is hiring this feature to do? You always start with that. Once that is done, then it is time to come up with a mental model. The mental model, as we discussed, conveys the ontology of the product. You don't start with the user experience mock. You don't start with the user journey. You always start with the mental model after your job to be done is clear. The next logical question is, when is a product mental model and the artifacts associated with the product mental model required? I mean, do we need to do this for every feature? If I'm building a really small feature, do I need to come up with a product mental model? You may have questions like that. So this is my guidance on when to use a product mental model or go back to a product mental model. When you're building a new product or a major initiative, you always start with the product mental model after you define the job to be done. While you're in the middle of a product development, if the user experience discussions and journey map discussions are becoming circular, and people are not able to agree upon something, or there seems to be too many meetings to discuss a small thing, it's usually because the underlying product mental model is not very clear. That's a good time to go back to the mental model and build one if there isn't one, or at least look at one if one has already been created. Another time product mental model will be valuable is when features seem incoherent. This one doesn't go well with the other feature. We built, let's say, an AI agent here, but there is another one AI agent. I mean, they seem to be doing the same thing. Or we built a document export feature here, but there is another document export feature somewhere else, seems to be doing the same thing, or they seem to be conflicting with each other. Things like that. When you see such incoherent features, it's always a good idea to go back to the basic mental model and say, what are the entities in the product? How do they relate to each other? And so on. This happens quite often in a product, particularly when a product team pivots from one product to the other, or when a product is handled by multiple product managers, or when two different teams are working on two different areas of a product. It happens more often than you think. And it's always a good time to go back and create a mental model, um, in the form of a diagram. You can always put it in a presentable format, in a slide, in a slide presentation, and then always go back to that when you have to make a decision. And if two different teams are working separately, it's always good to go back and look at that mental model, and always stick to that mental model. You can always change it if the mental model needs to be evolved, or if it needs to be changed. Teams can get together and agree upon the new mental model and then build from there. Another time the mental model is very valuable is when you're onboarding new team members, product managers, designers, even customer success architects, forward deployed product managers, even salespeople who are onboarding. It's always good to either create a mental model of the product, or um, document the mental model very clearly so that they can look at it. If you are joining a new team as a new leader or a product manager, the mental model is a very good place to start to understand the product and clarify your questions. I hope that helps.